Thanks to Magic Mind for sponsoring this video.
New iPhone coming in days, and Apple just made me change my mind about it.
Welcome to the All Future podcast, where we talk all things technology, AI, general tech is the same as technology. That's
Sure.
the term that came to my head. But Apple products and more. If you're enjoying these videos, we appreciate you watching, and we would love to have you subscribe. We actually crossed the 10,000 subscriber threshold recently.
That's very cool, man.
Yeah,
Very cool.
that was awesome. We were on the cusp last time we shot.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to everyone who has been watching and subscribing. Today we're talking about iPhones and the latest coming there in general. So first, the iPhone 17 is getting some even bigger rumors. And if you're confused about the nomenclature, we're coming up on the release of the 16. But a year from now will be the 17, and reportedly they're coming out with the 17 Air. And the rumors keep getting dialed in here. And it's looking like when it's coming to thinness, this is going to be very much in line with the iPad Pro.
So pretty thin. Pretty thin. I guess like they're saying the thinnest there or will make it is the thinness of a USB-C port, which is essentially what the iPad Pro is. Like I don't think you would get much thinner and still have a USB-C port in it. If you look at kind of the history of Apple, especially Steve Jobs' era, I would say, thinness, man, thinness. That's what they were all about all the time. And I will say, holding the iPad Pro feels cool, man. It feels cool. Feels like the future, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how all these rumors play out, but I'm kind of into this. Where are you at on it?
I'm definitely a fan. I think I would probably still go for whatever the Pro is above this if they reduce some camera functionality, but I would have to see because it would be pretty exciting. For comparison on millimeter thickness, the current iPhone 15 is 7.8 millimeters versus the iPad Pro is 5.1 millimeters. And the 15 Pro is 8.25 millimeters, so even thicker, versus 5.1 in the iPad Pro. So essentially they're just limited to that USB-C port like you said. And if you look at Apple's own USB-C connector on an iPad Pro, it's actually slightly thicker than the device itself. So they can go very thin here, thinner than you may even expect. But it does raise the question into the future. What is Apple going to do when they want to get thinner than that standardized USB-C port?
No ports, baby. That's where we're going, right? And that is also something that certainly in the Jobs era, that was the goal, man. If you look at what Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive were doing, right? They were, how can we get to the point where our products are just well-designed glass squares, you know? And then that's it. Nothing takes away from this beautiful glass and possibly aluminum square, right? And that's what they've been heading for a long time. You can go back in. There's a great book called Revolution in the Valley, which is about the creation of the Macintosh in 1984, or I guess the creation of it before it was released in 1984.
Yeah.
So it's the early 80s Apple. And it talks a lot about what Steve Jobs' thought process was with computers in general. And I think that carried through into the DNA of Apple, right? And that is, we are not really making a tech product. Like, he never thought of anything as a tech product, right? And he's like, we're making an almost like I don't know, art piece isn't really the right word, but something that is so innate and natural to use that anyone can pick it up and it's just activated and doing whatever they want, and they don't have to think about anything.
So Matt, we're always talking about new technology and things to improve our daily lives. But one technology we're not really talking about is, I don't know, the technology that is our own brains.
The most impressive technology of all.
It really is. And that brings us to today's sponsor, Magic Mind. These are mental performance shots. They have all sorts of different things like ceremonial grade matcha, adaptogens, nootropics, all sorts of stuff that improves the ATP in your mind. That's just kind of your body's natural engine. Another big thing this does is extend your caffeine release. So this goes alongside your daily coffee. I think you're a recent adopter of this. You've been trying this alongside me. How has your experience been?
I am, man. I'm on board with this. That's actually my favorite thing about it, is that you do it with like your daily coffee. So it doesn't give me that weird kind of feeling of like kind of those high caffeine energy shots. It gives me just this peaceful sense of energy, I would say, throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like I find myself just being less tired, more focused. It really is that mental energy shot.
I've absolutely taken it as well and had lots of experiences where I get a lot of work done, more so than my average day. A lot of these videos we're filming them back to back. I'll be able to do this and then work on a video for my Tesla channel and just kind of realize I'm very much in the zone, which is a big part of this.
Another cool thing, the effects compound when you take it multiple days in a row.
So if you want to check Magic Mind out for yourself, head to magicmind.com/allfuture20. You'll get up to 48% off of your first subscription for the next 10 days or 20% off of a one-time purchase.
If you look at even how the original Macintosh is set up, right, it's vastly different than, say, even the Apple II. Like the Apple II, you can just pop the top off, get in there, start messing around with the board and stuff pretty easy. Macintosh kind of sealed up, you know, so which is. And that just kind of kept going through the entire history of Apple. The question is, at one point, I think people thought this was interesting, right? This idea of, and you can look at even when the 12-inch MacBook released, which only had that one USB-C port, very famously, that did everything. And people were like, I don't know about this, but it's kind of cool that it's like this sleek design.
Yeah.
And then, continue on to Apple just stripping stuff out of products, from CD drives to USBs to everything, right? But where we are now, do people even view this as futuristic or cool anymore? Like if you did release an iPhone that was portless and super thin, would people even want that?
I can picture the vast majority of people being totally fine with this. There would be a little bit of a transition period where it's like, okay, I have to replace this cable with, like, I guess a MagSafe puck if I'm traveling or something.
That's really,
and technically that's a little bigger than a cable is, so maybe that's not convenient, but the majority of the time you're just slapping it on MagSafe chargers. But I don't know, maybe that's annoying for some people. But there are some of those use cases where people still want a port, like maybe they want high quality audio from whatever player and they plug in via a dongle right now because there's no 3.5 millimeter jack. Or I just think of music situations, like you can record into GarageBand using the right adapter. So that would get rid of that functionality. I'm not sure what dongle creation situation they could do it, right?
Yeah. And then the same thing in the video side of the house, like people who are like offloading raw video footage from the iPhones.
It films ProRes RAW. So.
Which I guess in Apple's argument would probably be like, oh, buy a Pro then, right? Because we're making this. Because the other thing is, like, is there a reason to do this besides just whatever the aesthetic kind of value of it? And it's, could you make it cheaper, right? And that's what we've talked about, is that every other Apple product line kind of has that Air tier, and the iPhones don't. So like it kind of like, that might be a nice place, just like it. Make it it's cheaper than the Pro. It's cooler than the baseline iPhone.
Yeah.
People get into that. I was just talking about this with someone. I go swimming with my iPhone all the time, right? I love to take underwater videos and photos of people. I swim and people are like, wait, you can do that? Like, I'm like, yeah, you can just for years. iPhone's waterproof.
People still. I even saw like a recent show where someone dropped their phone in something and like had to throw it in rice, and I'm like, it's fine.
Yep,
the phone is fine.
Everything totally works. Yeah, it doesn't need to worry about that at all.
Yeah,
but what the iPhone will do is not charge via the port if it's been in the water, because it doesn't want to short it, right?
Yeah.
And someone else who I swim with, they're like, oh, cool, and they took their phone in the water and they're like taking pictures and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. And then they go to charge and they're like, oh, what's this? And I'm like, oh yeah, that happens. And then I realized that like I never see that because I never plug my phone in. Right? Like I'm like, well, my car has wireless CarPlay. I've got the wireless charging little spot, in the car, so don't plug it in the car. Nightstand, I have a MagSafe, and on my desk, MagSafe, right? So like I'm never plugging it.
Yeah.
So this thing seems interesting to me.
Yeah, I will say the Tesla chargers, wireless chargers, are not that great. So
really?
I use the wireless charger, but sometimes it's just keeping it at.
Is it first party or is it like a third party thing? Does Tesla make it, or is it?
I mean, it's probably some supplier. It's not really specific.
But it doesn't push enough power to like.
No, not the majority of the time, at least. It can charge it over time, but sometimes I get to my destination, I'm like kind of at the same charge I was at, which is. So that would be, I don't know. You need to make sure that there's good wireless charging out there.
Yeah, like faster wireless charging. And you can also, I mean, we're talking about all like the problems with the whatever, transferring data from it and stuff like that. Like that could be solved too with different technologies. There's higher wireless transfer speeds. You can do different technologies you could do to kind of negate that too. But seems cool. I guess we'll see in a year or so.
Yeah, I think your argument about that being a non-pro thing is interesting. I didn't think about that because that's how it works with the computers. You have, like you were saying, the one with just one port.
Yeah.
And then if you're a pro that needs a lot of ports, you upgrade to the pro model with all the ports. And so they could do the same with the iPhone. But yeah, definitely interesting, but we're not going to see them remove that in the iPhone 17. This is more of like a probably 1920 what are the, iPhone XX? Is that what they're going to call the 20?
Maybe.
I'm not sure. But coming up, we do have a new color that has leaked, and this is the Desert Titanium. Now, technically, this is a mock-up that the sources say is likely accurate for the color, but it's kind of a new goldish looking color. What are your thoughts on this color?
Yeah, cool. We saw it last week, 2 weeks ago maybe, and it was a little darker looking in some of those renders. It's in the light changes these colors of these materials so much, right? Like I have the gold kind of iPhone, but it in this light especially, like it looks whitish, like like it's hard to like it loses a lot of that color unless you look at the band, So it's hard to say what these things are really going to look like in person based on the renders. Like you really got to see it in person, see how it reacts to the light. Looks awesome though, man. I'm into it. Desert Titanium. That's the one I'm getting.
Yeah, you're going for Desert Titanium.
100%. I like kind of the tannish kind of color anyway. Even if it does like maybe have some kind of reflection on it that makes it look a little, I don't know, closer to bronze-ish maybe, or some kind of like, I don't know, dark metallic kind of color. Yeah, I'm in on it.
Nice. Yeah, so basically we have the same info coming up on this. I guess when this video is releasing, we'll have about 5 days until the event. And then the next time we're shooting after this, we will be shooting at the event.
Yeah, we'll know for sure then.
Not at their event physically. Not yet. Maybe one day. But yeah, we'll be here filming with, I don't know, we'll probably watch the event behind us. And it's expected that the iPhone 16 Pro is going to get slightly larger. It's going to get a 5x camera on both versions of it. It's going to add a shutter button of some sort. They're supposed to add the action button to the normal iPhone 16, and then new colors across the board, new chips. But Apple Intelligence is supposedly going to be the main focus at this iPhone event.
Yeah, who cares about other stuff, right? Like how much is Apple Intelligence going to do for us?
Yeah, I know. It's funny though. I do know someone who was like, "I'm upgrading to the new phone," and I was like, "What? Like, why do you want to get the new phone?" They were like, "The cameras." I was like, but do you know what they released with the cameras? They're like, no, I just always want the best cameras. It's like, all right.
There's some people there's a million people like that. Like millions of people like that, right? Who are like, oh, I just want the newest thing. That's the newest one. Of course, that's what I'm going to get. Right? Like there's like totally like don't care about anything else. Yeah.
But we are, I think, also expecting AirPods and then new Apple Watches, Apple Watch 10 at that event. That'll likely come before the iPhone announcement. But what we're not expecting to see are new Macs. And supposedly Apple is going to be pushing that to another event. If we look back last year, they had their Scary Fast event on October 23rd, and then they announced their M3 Macs there and then released them November 7th. So a similar timeline is expected here, except it's going to be M4 Macs. We're expecting a new MacBook Pro with M4, new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro with M4 Pro and Max, and then a new iMac with M4, and then likely the most exciting one for people, because it's actually new, just not a chip swap, is an Apple TV-like Mac Mini with M4 and M4 Pro. And across the board, 16 gigabytes of RAM is rumored to be standard now.
Nice. For Apple Intelligence, that's what they're going to need. Yeah. Good lineup. Excited about this Mac Mini, man. That's what I'm about on this list. This seems cool.
Yeah, so it's expected to be about the form factor of an Apple TV, which if you're familiar, I guess the Mac Mini is probably about like this right now. The Apple TV is like this. So much smaller, probably taller than it is. But one big thing is it's going to remove USB-A ports, which some people are going to be like, what? But I am not shocked.
No, like
I guess we just talked about removing all ports from the iPhone.
Exactly.
So.
At least they're keeping some ports on this thing, man. Like, most new stuff is using USB-C anyway. It has been for a while now.
Yeah.
There's anything that has a USB-A is usually like a cheap thing or a legacy thing, Like it's and I mean, there's so many adapters, right? If you really need something, you're using some old device or whatever that uses USB-A. So yeah, this makes total sense to me. And they got to make it smaller some kind of way, right?
Yeah.
And stripping out those larger legacy ports does it.
And it doesn't provide nearly as much because that USB-C port is actually Thunderbolt 4. is what they would put in there. So that gives you Thunderbolt as well as USB and full monitor function through it, as opposed to USB-A. It's just going to be quite limited.
See, now you're talking crazy, man. That'd be cool if all of those are Thunderbolts and not some not being just USB-C.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. I'm trying to think. I think on the there's definitely Apple computers where they're not all Thunderbolt and some of them are just USB-C.
I looked it up. The Studio, they're all Thunderbolt.
They're all Thunderbolt in the Studio, right? Which kind of makes sense to the Studio. Like, so I wonder if they like maybe aren't all Thunderbolt. And when Apple does one that's like Thunderbolt and the rest aren't, they'll do a little like oval around it with the little Thunderbolt symbol above it, and that's how you know that's the Thunderbolt one, and the rest are not. But this seems very cool. This is going to be a very popular machine, I think.
Yeah.
It depends on what price they're going to come in on this thing. I'm hoping for something kind of surprisingly low, which I think would be really cool and help Apple sell a lot of these things. And when I say surprisingly low, $499.
Nice.
I think that's. I think people are expecting this thing to be $700-800 or whatever, and that's not crazy out of line with Mac Mini prices. You know, like they're in the past, especially like I want to say you used to be able to get an entry Mac Mini for like $350, I think even. Like this is back in the white plastic days, you know, so it's a little older, but so yeah, like I think that coming in that good price like that, this is gonna be a very popular machine, I think, for people.
Yeah, for those USB ports, apparently there's going to be 5 total, 3 in the back and then 2 up front, which is very convenient for those being located there. And then we'll see if they all are Thunderbolt ports. At this point, I kind of hope that they are, and maybe the technology has gotten to where it's so standardized and scaled that they're just like it's cheaper than standard USB, but and I guess just less confusing to the consumer. Maybe they're tired of people coming in like this port doesn't work.
Well, and there's actually, I mean, there's some tech limitations there too, though. It's the same reason why the lower end Mac Mini now doesn't have as many USB-C ports. And I think it's some kind of the controller or whatever on the board can't handle more ports or whatever. So. So I guess we'll see what they do. Seems cool to me, though. I love having the ports on the front. A smaller form factor like that seems very cool to me. I'm super into that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, I mean, right now, my kind of standard, my at-home machine that I mainly use is a Mac Studio. And I'm like, man, I don't even need this thing, dude.
Yeah.
If I can sell that and get a new Mac Mini and make a couple bucks profit on the difference, I might consider that, especially if it's in a smaller form factor, like it's less space, noise, heat, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that seems cool.
Nice. And apparently the power supply is still going to remain internal, so it's just going to be a cable coming out of there as opposed to a brick.
Wild, man.
If they're keeping it small and still able to do that.
I mean, even the iMacs still have that kind of external power supply brick thing, you know. And then for years, Apple's had crazy brick stuff. Like I mean, there's some funny examples of that. If you go look at like the G4 Cube, its power supply is as big as a G4 Cube. So it's like a whole nother big box, you know. And then the Mac Minis have had big, you know, outside bricks before too. Like, so that's cool. That's a look at technology marching forward, making life a little easier for us, and not having some big external power supply.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Another benefit of all those ports, obviously, as well, is that you just don't have to get some sort of, not just dongle and converter, but like hub. Because I guess if they're going to have multiple Thunderbolt ports, that does allow you to put multiple Thunderbolt devices in there without having to expand your single Thunderbolt with some sort of hub, because those tend to be kind of expensive. So that could be a savings, but also that may translate to a more expensive price on the Mac Mini. We'll have to see, but hopefully we'll find that all out by somewhere like October 23rd and then see those released in November.
Another new product here on the horizon, a new keyboard for the iPad. And this one kind of for the more entry-level models is what they're kind of thinking. Possibility of having function keys and things like that. And I guess we'll see how that all works out. But it seems the idea is making something a little cheaper for something like the iPad Air.
Yeah.
The Magic Keyboard for an iPad Pro is wildly expensive for what it is.
I agree.
Like it's $350, I think, right? Like
it's crazy.
Yeah. I'm like, that's nuts. That's nuts for what this thing is, man. And it is nice. Like it's nice.
Oh yeah.
On my new iPad though, my larger one, I opted not to get a keyboard because I was like, man, am I really using this keyboard that much? Like, is it worth that much extra weight and everything else to like have this keyboard thing? My answer was no, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this seems cool. It seems like a no-brainer for Apple to kind of fill in that product category. To if you want the cheaper iPad, here's a cheaper version of our keyboard that works with it and seamlessly attaches with the magnets and stuff, so it's easy. But of course, there's some third-party iPad keyboards. There's so many of them that are built into cases and not in cases and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of solutions if you want a keyboard for your iPad.
Yeah.
It seems like Apple's just like, oh, well, let's make one more of those from us.
And yeah, if they can make it a little cheaper and still keep some of that design, because I have right now, I kind of use an iPad Air and like I'll journal on it and stuff and use the keyboard, but it's like a Logitech third-party keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
And it's definitely not the same experience as the Magic Keyboard.
No.
I mean, it can't be. It's not as thin. It's not as like beautifully integrated and everything. It does connect, with that there's like 3 connectors on the back. But yeah, if they can make their own version of that I would probably get it. But I never opt for the Magic Keyboard because you price out your iPad and you're like, okay,
Yeah, and
I'm getting ready for this, and then you price out the keyboard. It's like, I should just get a MacBook at this point.
And that's kind of the question, right? Like I had the Magic Keyboard for my old iPad Pro, so my smaller iPad Pro.
Okay.
And used it a lot, right? And I kind of used it as a MacBook is what I was really using it for. Something we don't talk about, the trackpad on that's pretty good too.
Yeah.
So it's a nice package if you're going to be someone who's working that hybrid flow where you're like, oh, I kind of use this as my laptop sometimes. I kind of use this as a tablet sometimes.
Yeah.
But I got a MacBook. So so now I'm like, oh, like I'll just go for my MacBook if I need a keyboard or something. And so that's why I opted not to get it this time. But I think that's who's really interested in this, is people who are replacing a laptop functionality. That's who really needs this thing.
Yeah, so there's always this balance of input devices and ports coming from Apple. How much do we want them to add? How much do we want them to take away? Because we're getting excited about more USB-C ports on the Mac Mini, and then simultaneously talking about let's get rid of all ports on the iPhone.
The duality of man there.
Absolutely.